Hang on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fluently Salesforce, where we talk about Salesforce stuff in a free conversation. And today we're going to be focused on the AppExchange. What is the AppExchange? What can you find there? And these kind of stuff. And first, let's start with a round of introduction. And Jodie.
Hi, I'm Jodie Miners, and I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and a newly minted Salesforce MVP Hall of Fame, and and it's dark where I am, so that's why I look a little dark. And over to Szandor, please.
Hello, my name's Szandor. I'm from Munich, Germany. I work with Daniel Stange for the Interactiven as a Salesforce evangelist. So looking forward to the discussion today because before I was working for Daniel, I was working as an ISV who had several products on the AppExchange. Over to Ines.
Hello, I'm in the UK, although I was born in Barcelona, and I'm also recently been named Salesforce MVP Hall of Fame, if that's not long enough. And yeah, interested in all Salesforce matters and also Agile Coach and another myriad of things. Daniel?
Yes, I'm Daniel from the Frankfurt area in Germany. I'm a Salesforce MVP, not yet a Hall of Famer, but recently renewed. Happy. One of the points where my Salesforce career started was Jodie Miners' blog, so she's rightfully a Hall of Famer because being my number one resource in the early days. And I, as an architect in projects, typically have the duty to look up in the AppExchange what there is, and most often I find something that the customer doesn't like because that's extra fees for something, and I always have to tackle the build or buy decision. That's why the topic is really interesting for me. But before we talk, over to Andre van Kampen.
Yeah, hi. So yeah, I'm Andre, based in Holland, and yeah, I've been a consultant for the last 10 years, and that is for implementation partners, but also for ISV partners. And besides working for them, I've also worked with a lot of them. Very interesting topic. But then Roy, I think you haven't done your introduction yet.
Yes, hi. Hi, I'm Roy. I'm located in Israel. I have my own, not to be an AppExchange Arnav, which is for ARR tracking. Yes, we'll discuss that about in the future in this part of the conversation. And in the last 7-8 years, I've been part of the partner community, both as a consultant and as an ISV, official and unofficial. It's an interesting place to be, the partner community. Interesting, very interesting. So that concludes our round of introductions. And let's start with first understanding what is exactly the AppExchange, because it's a very vast word. I mean, not everyone knows exactly what is the AppExchange. So can you give me just a few sentences about what it is?
The App Store for Salesforce products?
The App Store. I like the App Store equivalent rather than the Play Store, the Google Store. The reason I like it because in Google's when you upload to Google, there is you have less for security measures and a more relaxed, I would say, security and processes to go on to be listed on the Google Store versus on the Apple Store. And I think that the equivalent to the App Store is very to the point because it's when a partner goes to the App Store, it takes an effort to go to be on the AppExchange. You need to put a bit of an effort to be there. So,
but just to collect maybe listeners and viewers who are not too much into the technical details. So as a consumer, what do I do on the AppExchange? I get an app like I do on my iPhone or like I do on my Google. And what you just explained are the processes that an app vendor and producer needs to go through in order to be listed on that marketplace. So that's the second info I think that's important. It's a marketplace in terms of where things have a price or can have a price. They don't need to. There are also free apps in there. And you can browse it and then choose something you like. By now, it also has been extended to include, so the AppExchange is a website, has been extended to also include informations on partners and ratings on partners. And ratings are also a point on the AppExchange, like in many other marketplaces of that kind. Apps can get ratings and users can write comments and you can look them up, and the app vendors can comment too. So if there are questions, they can respond to them. And then you quickly realize that there are responsive vendors, there are unresponsive vendors, there's a whole bunch of everything. So in summary, you get apps which you can install. And the last thing that Roy hinted at, and that's my conclusion for now, is what are the requirements to go as a vendor to the App Store or to the AppExchange. And I have no clue about Apple Ways, I have no clue about Google Ways, but I do know about the Salesforce Ways. And the Salesforce way is to put their #1 core value, trust, in front of the AppExchange on every label and marketplace and say, look, everything that is listed there has gone through a so-called security review. So someone from Salesforce has checked that everything is PG security-wise, and the app doesn't and cannot do evil things in your org.
So just also note that there is private listings on the AppExchange. So the ones that are marked at the heading private listing may not have gone through security review. They may have and then been taken off public listing, but they may not have. That's also a way that they can distribute apps in that way. So it's only if it's public on the AppExchange that it has gone through security review.
In any case, you should see a pop-up for any app you install that has not gone through security review. And I see Roy grinning. I know there are many cases where we want to install stuff as ISVs maybe, but generally speaking, any app that has gone through the security review has no orange warning and hence has the stamp of the security review team.
Can you explain to us what the security review consists of?
The security review process is actually let's say I'm going to say it bluntly. Nobody knows except Salesforce. Okay, it's also you could submit several times and you could get different responses on the same submission. But generally speaking, what goes there are they do check the code, meaning that you check level of access, that you're for example that you respect Salesforce sharing mechanisms. Salesforce sharing mechanisms only allow a certain user to access certain records within a system. With using code, you can bypass that. So as part of when you list an app in the AppExchange, you must make sure that your app respects all the sharing mechanisms of Salesforce, and you need to do that by code, meaning that you need to check field level security. You need to check that you're querying only fields that you have access to, that all the classes are with sharing. A lot of comments over that. Other than that, if there are any endpoints, meaning outbound or inbound communication, that they are secured, even a penetration test, you need to upload a certificate. You need to upload that you did penetration test to your exposed endpoint on your own servers, even though they're not as part of Salesforce, to make sure that they are they're protected. You need to show that the data that's being sent into Salesforce and out of Salesforce is being protected, meaning it's being authenticated, authorized, and you need to show that you're using security mechanisms to ensure that. Again, as Szandor said, security, trust. It's all built on trust, which is basically, when you narrow it down to technical requirements, is security.
That is if you choose to add code, custom code to your app. So assume you have a brilliant idea for a use case and a data model and a few dashboards and reports, and you want to sell it to customers and maybe also add a few flows, but those are only screen flows in user context. Then you get the security for free on the platform. Only when you really add custom code, Apex triggers, we often do, and we do all the time. But technically speaking, if you just use platform features that cannot escalate anything around sharing or field level security or any other concerns like callouts, then you pass the security review with flying colors, because everything is built on a platform and by standard tools, and that is covered by Salesforce themselves.
Yeah. So you're saying you have to undergo the security review, but you will pass because there's no code in it. Would you say that there are things that people would expect from a security review or from a review, but aren't in the review actually? So kind of, would I as a customer expect something of that review that is not covered?
No, it's probably the other way around. So the security review is really, really, really picky. So if, for example, you use some external library like a JavaScript library, you upload that library as a static resource in Salesforce. Now, if this library has any security concern, it will be flagged by Salesforce. Now, is there an actual attack vector for this specific issue? Only if you suppose somebody with weird coding skills as an admin within the org, already authorized and logged in as a user, then somehow you might be able to exploit this particular overflow in a JavaScript library bug. But it's still going to get flagged. So we are required to use most recent external libraries that also often need to go some sort of security check, and if anything has been found or discovered later, it will be flagged. So if my library is okay now because no one has discovered anything, I will pass security review next time around, because security reviews don't happen once, they happen regularly. Then it will be flagged and I need to do something about it.
Okay, so that's basically if you do the old school thing and have Visual Force pages and include jQuery on that, they will review jQuery the 10,000th time actually for me. Okay.
Their tools will. That is also maybe interesting to know. There's lots of apps on the AppExchange. There are a lot of companies being founded trying to get a foothold on the ISV space. It's recurring revenue. It's a strong marketplace. Hence, they're swamped with requests. And it's not like they have a gazillion security reviewers. And even if, just imagine your job reading things line by line, different code from different people from around the world, doesn't scale. So they invest a lot into automated testing and tools, and some of those are also exposed to us partners in terms of we can use some of those tools to do the scans ourselves. So that's also part of the package.
There's a really good Salesforce developers podcast just in the last few weeks around the code scanner that explains all of that, and it goes into a lot of technical detail about what that does. So that's really good for even admins and people who are using the AppExchange to sort of understand that sort of level. But the AppExchange is not just about apps that do all sorts of code things. The AppExchange is about Lightning components, You can have flows that you can download from the AppExchange. You can have what are those things called that are for all the lightning bolts for basically skins or pre set up for your experiences site, and even
dashboards. Dashboards. I love dashboards because you can actually go to AppExchange and download lots of standard reports Salesforce built or dashboards that they pre-built for free, which are not part if you buy a org new, but they're really helpful to get started. So browsing AppExchange also because there are great free apps like declarative roll-up summary tools that help you summarize data in your org. That just can help you solve your business requirement quicker, and that's maybe something, Daniel, you want to speak to. So when do you need to go, or when do you go to the AppExchange? And Andre and Ines, when do you go to the AppExchange?
Yeah. Well, the interesting point is, I was just about to ask Roy, because he said he's thinking of new things to do on the AppExchange, and with the notion that there are tens of thousands of apps already on the AppExchange, my less creative mind would have said, okay, is there really uncharted territory on the AppExchange? Or is it probably even as interesting economically that it's even worth working on the long tail of ideas and being the second or third or the fourth or fifth in the row? I go to the AppExchange quite rarely, and if so, to get installation links for packages that I already know. On the other hand, the idea of getting reports there is something that didn't even come to my mind yet. But it's a brilliant idea to share things that that everybody needs and uses. So I'm really a bit overwhelmed of the lack of ways I looked into. So
I use AppExchange a lot. Like
Indeed,
actually probably spend every couple of months I will go through all the new components at least and have a look for the new components. There's some really cool new components. And because I'm currently in the process of building a component and getting it onto the AppExchange, hopefully in the next in March through the open source commons. That's why I one of my things is I have to know all the competitor components and explain why this one's actually better or why ours is better. So I'm actually actively looking, but also I want to be able to build versus buy. I don't want to build something if something's already out there. So I wrote a blog post back in 2012 where I basically said, I called it Thinking Like Salesforce, where I set in place some of my rules for how I deal with Salesforce. And one of the first things is don't reinvent the wheel. And of course, if something is already on the AppExchange, you're not going to build it yourself. There's so much cool stuff on the AppExchange that you can even refactor to make it your own. Or just start with that and build upon it. Or there's so many amazing apps on the AppExchange you can actually do stuff with. But I don't also only use the AppExchange. If there's an app somewhere that is even not on the AppExchange and hasn't gone through security review, I'll go and test it out and have a look at its code and make sure I feel like comfortable with it. Then I will actually use it in some of my orgs also. You just got to be a bit more careful and pragmatic about those sorts of things.
Yeah. And the interesting bit about there used to be a kind of standard price points like there are in the Salesforce, the Apple App Store as well, with these $199, $599 prices, etc. And the thing that hindered me that held me back is by kind of, if you have something at a formerly $15 price point, now $19 price point, you pick 4 or 5 of them, and you already have the same amount as the customer has spent on the license, the Salesforce license, and that's hard to negotiate. On the other hand, obviously, work not done saves a lot of money, and that's basically. But it's at times I find it hard to negotiate. On the other hand, you have the kind of different ways of spending. Is it operational cost or
CapEx? Yeah.
and then you push by 20 bucks in operational cost is not exactly the same thing as 20,000 bucks in CapEx. So
and the costing is in AppExchange is quite difficult. It's a difficult sell sometimes, because people have paid a lot of money for Salesforce and they think Salesforce does everything. And I say, well, actually, no, you need a backup solution. You need a document generation solution. You need an e-signing solution. You need this, you need this, you want this, you want this, you want this. And you've got to go out and buy those things, and then people get a bit disappointed. And then plus, of course, we've got to have an extra user as an integration user to actually integrate with all these apps.
Yes.
So we've got to have an extra license just to do that. And it's the rules are not the rules. The recommendation is you actually have an integration user for every single app that you're integrating. But there's some apps out there on the AppExchange that still require you to have a full system administrator license to be able to use that app as for integration. And I could go off on a big tangent about that, but we've got to be really careful about this. That's one thing we said before. What do I wish I knew about apps on the AppExchange? One of them is that, like, what permissions does this app require to be run? And they don't advertise that this requires system administrator privileges to run. They don't. And when you install the apps, it's got all of the endpoints it's actually connecting to. There could be 30 endpoints there. There's no explanation even provided the app providers as to what those endpoints do. And so for me, that's a hard thing to A, know myself, and B, explain that to my clients. So I don't want to get negative too quickly, but there is some, really concerns that we have to think about when using AppExchange apps. But again, this build versus buy, you're not going to go and build your own electronic signing, document signing tool, right? You're just not going to do that. So you've just got to go out and look at all the different options to find the best one.
You don't know the surprises you find sometimes.
Yeah. You indeed, Ines. That's exactly the point. But I don't have a bench and the interest in one shot revenue to actually do this. But indeed, there are really people who say, "Okay, you're here. Let's do this with our money."
One of the things that maybe we could clarify out of interest is pricing models. So far, I've seen pay-per user, so very similar to the license of how Salesforce operates. Also, I've seen pricing for the whole org. Doesn't matter how much you use, how many users there are there. I wonder if there are also, which I can't recall, some sort of pricing of how much you use. So you may imagine some sort of like payment gateway. So you pay per transaction rather than per user, so per org. And also, what's the pricing of being part of the AppExchange? Is it at 25% of your text that you return to Salesforce, or how does that work?
I would just for a second come back to Jodie's point about endpoints and no documentation. Again, it's about the ISVs who put that up in terms of documentation or do not put it up. It's certainly something that I think an excellent vendor would document in some way. And on the other hand, I would say the most excellent vendor would strive to not use them at all. Because it's a concern for people emotionally on installing for every admin who might not exactly know what's behind them, who is still legally in charge of something. And that's a bad thing. That's why I said, if you stick to standards as an ISV, as difficult as it might sound and as tempting as it might be to have an external app with wow kind of things, you need to be aware you really own that thing. And if you build something on the platform, you only own your customizations, frankly speaking, and that's so much less to own. Pricing for usage, yes. Pricing for usage exists. Think of an SMS app. You will have a base cost in terms of purchase or license per month. And you can also use usage-based pricing. ISV tracks and puts it on your invoice, and then it will be invoiced.
Yeah, so
And
even
I think
with document generation, if you do automated document generation or bulk document generation, that's going to be usage-based pricing also, and definitely for payment systems, that'll be usage-based pricing also. So I think the pricing is there's so many different pricing options out there. Where I get really can't use an app with the pricing is where they have 10 users minimum or 30 users minimum or 50 users minimum, because none of my clients are that big, you know, so that really stops me from even being able to look at a couple of apps for many in many cases. So that's another factor. And, you know, I found apps on the AppExchange that cost $125,000, you know, so they can come from free and like, you know, really high price. And then there are also apps on the AppExchange that seem to have only ever been built for one client, but they're on the AppExchange because they only do this one very specific thing. And you try and install it, and if you're not doing that actually very specific thing, it just doesn't work. So I love trying these apps and playing around with these apps and critiquing them.
And I also think, you know, with critiquing and all those things that you just mentioned, like as a user, when you shop around, or a consultant, because I do spend a lot of time on the AppExchange just to see what's around, and 9 out of 10 times is when I, when you do like a solution design, or customer comes to you like, I would like to have this, to actually go and build it. And I'm all for choosing something that's already built and branded and checked. But I've had it too many times where there's like 3, 4, sometimes 5 solutions available on the AppExchange, but either really expensive or they're not transparent about it. Way too many objects or other things that when you install it and start using it, you hit several limits you didn't know you were close to. Bad reviews, or how do you say that? Product was never updated, or years ago. And one thing I sort of learned recently is make sure, well, that's what I would say, that the type of company that builds or manages this package matches the sort of the maturity level and the type of company you're going to use this for. Because say you have a very, very mature company, they've used Salesforce forever, they're going to use it for another 10 years. If it's an app, a bit like what Jodie just described, that's maybe built for one customer, or built by some, like, you know, a freelance consultant who just happened to do something right, who is going to make sure that there's always support? I'm not going to be able to support this. So even though all these things, a few times we've decided to still build it ourselves.
But there's also the opposite to that also, is that sometimes having an app that's built by a single person, they can really even customize it for you. I'm going to call out another MVP that's built an app called Asimio, Amnon, and it's a fabulous app, and I've been able to get him. He's actually really been helping you to sort of customize it a little bit for what I wanted, in an org that was a little bit of a different edge case scenario for it. But, you know, that's one example, and a couple of examples of, you know, smaller apps that actually will go out of their way to really help. But there is definitely other apps that is like, I want a set of guidelines that you don't put your app on the AppExchange, or you have to take your app off the AppExchange within 3 months unless you follow these guidelines. One is that your marketing material is updated in the last, X years. 2 is that you do not have vertical nav showing in your marketing material. Vertical nav was what, 9 years ago now, when Lightning first came out, 8 years ago. You know, the very first time Lightning came out, it had vertical nav bar. And there's still apps on the AppExchange that have got their images showing vertical nav. The third one is like the commissions. I want those commissions documented. The endpoints, I want all the endpoints documented. I want the actual help documents there and visible, and, you know, all the documentation. So I want a customer treaty to say that as a customer of the AppExchange, these are the things that I expect from the AppExchange. I think recently they've made a better with the new look of the AppExchange, they made a better inroads into the pricing, because previously the pricing only had one pricing option. Now you can have multiple pricing options. So that's for those partners who've updated their listings. That's a lot better now. But I just think we need a lot more rigor around how apps are put on the AppExchange. There are some ugly apps on the AppExchange.
One thing
But
that
that's
sorry.
I'm just saying the AppExchange is huge, and there are app vendors that are huge themselves, right? And if I go as a single customer with 30 licenses to a huge app vendor and say, could you build this custom for me? I won't even get a response, usually, right? Because obviously a mismatch. I don't go to Adidas and say, hey, can you put me yellow shoes or Salesforce clouds on my shoes, please,
They will
tomorrow.
do. They will print it for you and it will be delivered in 24
Yes, I know
hours.
it was a bad
Yeah.
example. It was a bad example. They do by now. Yes, hit me harder.
And it's driven by Commerce Cloud and Marketing Cloud and Genie.
Okay, we also
and,
Dreamforce. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, it's just a huge space that I'm saying. That's why you will find eager business people who have an app or also built an app, one-person companies who are happy to help in some way. But it's also okay. And we look from my ISV perspective. Yes, you grow by customer. Obviously you grow with your customer needs, and if a customer needs something, you talk with them, and ideally you make them happy because you get recurring revenue, right? So it's a give and take situation, and I would also expect to have app recent updates. Now there are apps that are complete, like feature complete. You can't do really much about them. But other than that, I would also look at, are those apps frequently updated? And a bigger app usually means a lot can be updated, and hence regular traffic is good.
So I'm gonna share my screen for a moment, and let's see if we can identify what should be the user. Wait, let's see, where is it? Sorry. Let's see if we can. Yeah. What? Sorry, I missed the. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so let's see what the user needs to look at. I chose a random app by Salesforce Labs. Salesforce Labs is one of Salesforce's good examples of taking in-house products, or not exactly products, packaging them up and shipping it out on the AppExchange. Usually it's free to, not usually, always free to play, without any, well, sorry, without any cost. Usually free packages. So you mentioned a few things. You mentioned look at the rating of the package. So here we can see 4.73, and also by a lot of reviewers, relatively. Okay, 22 reviewers is relatively a high amount of reviewers. And of course, we can go and look at them and see that they're real people. It's very important to know, even when you're looking at an app, it's very important to look who actually gave the review. We know that sometimes reviews are made by friends or by the same ecosystem, and that's why it could have some kind of bias review. So you need to look at the review, and you need to look when it was given. Meaning if you see reviews from 2015, maybe it's not the right app now. Another thing that you mentioned was that in the more details, you mentioned to see when was it first released, but when was it updated? So here we can see, even though it was released 6 years ago, it was updated at the end of December, at mid-December. So it's relatively updated and being maintained. And also, Jodie mentioned to make sure that it is Lightning ready and all compatibility with different features that we have.
So the limits one there is interesting because That was from way back in about 2010 or something, when AppExchange apps would have tab limits. It would take up your tab limits, and since about then there's been no limits on probably about 2012 or something. There've been no limits. So actually, I don't even ever look at those things anymore, because I just know that an app is not going to be subject to any of those licensing limits that previously there were.
But Andrea, I think you mentioned that you're looking at the number of custom objects that the package has.
Well, that's really
Yeah, I think they still
Some of
count.
them are very heavy. Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting example because Salesforce Labs in the past, when I started, used to be the most unreliable vendor of these kinds of packages, where you could have all the red flags. The marketing material is not updated, no releases. A vendor that is primarily interested in selling their licenses and not building the package. Obviously, no support for these packages because all of them were unmanaged, and so you had them in the org, and once you had them there, you had to clean up on your own if need be. And I think they did a really good job to revise the concept of what they put on the AppExchange on their own, and then also demonstrate how the AppExchange should work in their opinion. So it's very interesting because I didn't look into Salesforce Labs listings in detail, as you just demonstrated, for quite a while, and it showcases that they understood quite a number of things about providing packages for their own product, which is interesting and a good tendency, even though it took some time to get there.
And they've got a program now where they really encourage the internal developers, like on this one, to put their labs apps on GitHub in open.
Yeah, exactly.
Open source it. So you can see here, Philippe has put his app on GitHub there.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. And that's basically another big push, that they encourage people to build these things and then to open source and maintain these things as well. And maintain and open source being the two big factors for that. Yeah.
So one of the things, I guess, that before I like to try to infuse my customers to do before we go out into the shopping high street is to create a matrix, right? You know by now, I love visuals, where before you go out and get all excited with flashy new things, you plot down on your left all the different things you want that stuff to do. And that also includes pricing, right? How much are you ready to invest in something so that you don't have to build it? What would that look like? How much are you saving? So it's a little bit of an effort, but it's a conscious choice. It becomes an information radiator. What are you after? And then, and only then, when you have agreement into what is this thing supposed to do, what are you comfortable with or not in terms of sysadmin integration uses, it can be many things. Then you go to the high street and you look around. And it's very easy exercise to see how many, available apps are there for what you're trying to solve, and what are they matching, right? You can color code that it's green, this bit is green, this bit is red, this bit, and then it's very easy to surface this in a meeting and make an informed decision very quickly. And from the same sort of thing, if you are planning to put an app in the AppExchange, you can do a very similar pattern, right? How much are you willing to invest on maintenance, on support? What are all the things to consider? It's not just, look, I have a product, I put it in Amazon and I forget about it. It has other implications. So very quickly you can make a visual and an informed economic decision. Are you going to go to market this way or not? And if you don't know, hire Jodie. She's a very good product manager.
But thank you, Ines. But how many times have you gone through that process, that really good due diligence, and really done that? Like I've just recently done my wish list for a electronic signing app on the AppExchange, because I just recently had the most horrendous experience with a terrible app. I will not name them. And it wasn't DocuSign. DocuSign is one of the better apps out there as far as e-signing goes, but it's really priced itself out of the market. So, with my small business clients, I really want a, reasonable. I don't need all the features. I just want a reasonable, excellent signing app. And so I've really been stung a bit too many times now, where I've gone through that, done all the due diligence, done, the shopping bit, really talked to my clients about the need for the app and understand the need for the app, and then actually tried to implement it and been burnt myself. That actually cost me money because I can't be on charging all of this support, go through their technical support onto my clients. So it's ended up costing me far too much money. So again, it doesn't matter whether the app's on the AppExchange or not. You're going to have even software providers of any kind, not even just on the Salesforce platform. You're going to have that. So it's just like, yes, absolutely, you've got to do all of that process of going through and ensuring that you understand what you want and looking at it. But it's not it's not the be all and end all. It's not going to be a silver bullet to make sure that you've done everything. So.
Fair enough. I forgot. I think we haven't mentioned one of the very interesting things, which is a lot of the apps in the AppExchange you can install in your contacts and play with them. Mm-hmm. Because one thing is how things look on paper, yes, and another thing is how things behave in real life. And your contacts, I mean, these things are bundled like frameworks, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have your best interest at hand. They don't know you, right? So you need to play in your contacts. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that if you are going shopping and you have a couple that fits the bill quite well, mm-hmm, play with both mm-hmm of them. Mm-hmm. Try to break the thing and see how support responds, like, mm-hmm, play in real life.
Yeah. And this is, I think, is a really good segue to the OEM versus standard apps. Now, is everyone here really familiar with an OEM app and why it's different on the AppExchange, or should I explain that a bit more? We'll explain.
I think it's important to explain.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the word OEM stands for owner equipment manufacturer. It comes from many years ago when computers were first done, and it's like white label computers. So we don't use that word like long form now because it doesn't mean anything. But OEM apps are apps where that app provider can sell you the whole app, the whole basically platform, the whole Salesforce platform, and they can sell you licenses for Salesforce, and their app is already usually pre-installed in the org. There are some OEM apps that you can install into your own org, but some sort of start off as an OEM org. Now, most of these apps are built on the Salesforce platform licenses. So that means you get 10 or 100 custom objects, that you don't get opportunities, you don't get leads, you don't get campaigns, etc. So there's a lot more limitations on the licensing for them, but they can be then really cost effective. So and they're very usually things like, there's a couple of real estate apps that I've used that are OEM apps that are really quite good because they're really tailored for that industry. So they can be really good and really help people get into the Salesforce platform. Now, you can do what we call license stacking, where you can have an OEM app and then actually buy Salesforce licenses from Salesforce on top of that, and use campaigns and marketing and do campaign monitor or something like that integration, and do that inside your app that's built on an OEM app. The problem with OEM or even big apps, these big apps that sort of take over your whole org, if you build your whole org on it, then changing that at a later date means basically starting again. So some orgs are just so sticky that anything that you build upon them is going to be a real problem that you are not going to be able to change away from them. So you're sort of committed to that app for the long term. So yeah. That's just to know, and it's not clear. When you look at an app, it's not clear. You really have to talk to that provider and say, what sort of licensing is this, and sort of understand a bit more about the Salesforce licensing. But that's where you get a partner like me to help.
Just before we're gonna wrap things up, it was mentioned to go on a shopping spree, not shopping spree, but to go on the shopping boulevard. And when you decide that or when you build your matrix about what the needs, where do you usually go to look for? I mean, is it only the AppExchange? Is it also other places? What's your process? Andrea, let's start with you.
Usually start off with just Googling, because indeed there are also some apps and solutions that are not always on the AppExchange, or they're not there yet, or they're only hidden. 9 out of 10 times you end up on the AppExchange anyway.
I use a lot the power of recommendations. So thankfully I can ask my network and very honest, brutally honest individuals in the ecosystem for quite some time, just to get recommendations, because I find that very useful versus how things could look very pretty and sound wonderful, but real life experience is just so valuable.
And if you don't have your own inbuilt brains trust like we as the MVP community do, the Ohana Slack has a great resource they've got a channel called Apps, Extensions and Tools, where people can get on there and ask that exact thing, where the recommendations from other people in the community around apps. So that's absolutely the highest thing thing you can do is get recommendations from others. At least you can blame them if it goes wrong.
I'm actually a terrible lead, but the thing that for the people who advertise on community conferences, but the things that really made an impression on me come back from my elephant's brain years and years after. So even while good, I'm basically I don't buy immediately, but I will remember later. So even these kind of demos and conversations, sales conversations, have an impact on my where I start Googling, and then I'm going down entries.
To someone from Forcelandia 2016, a sponsor from Forcelandia 2016, just last year when I was looking at something and say, hey, I saw your app in 2016 at Forcelandia. They said, what?
Yes, exactly. It will go into their marketing campaign analysis from 2016. Congrats, well done. Sorry, Szandor, I cut you short.
No worries. For me, the most pressing thing is indeed trust, and the opposite of that, abuse of things in your org. So whatever you install in your org from wherever it comes, make sure that you use someone trustworthy. I'm not saying something trustworthy, I'm saying someone trustworthy. So you need to trust the people. And also, a security review is a measure, and it's a good measure, and they're tightening up everything. It's still always try it out first and understand what's happening. It's your business data and your production org. Give it a test run.
Wow, Daniel, that's amazing. What have you done?
Look at that. I basically we started from scratch with conversation only, and we ended up with a beautiful board again, with the help of our the most capable Scrum and Agile Master and Agile coach ever on the planet, who recently published a book on that, which is still on sale. So go and buy it. No, okay. End of jokes and end of advertising here. We really moved through a lot of topics, and we put it on the board again, and I think the outcome is really nice. We scratched what's in the AppExchange. We talked about what brings you to the AppExchange, which basically is a security review for your published products. Thought about a bit the niches that there are and what is actually on the AppExchange. I learned something here because I never thought of reports on the as a product on the AppExchange. We talked about a bit of the economics and the concerns and considerations. One big thing that comes to my mind when you talk is about licenses is that one of the last things that Brad Taylor has announced before he left Salesforce was that there is going to be a discounted or even free license for integration usage, which will improve the experience that Jodie outlined a lot.
Let's see at TDX whether that's announced then.
Oh yeah, probably not by Brett Taylor, I'd guess. And then we really got into the really deep into how to select a product from the AppExchange with good tips, what to check, and basically building a real checklist for that, which is excellent conversations. What did we miss, Roy? What did we miss from your checklist?
I think we covered almost all of it. It's a great way to wrap up. I mean, beautiful. It was a beautiful discussion, and it is a beautiful Miro board.
Thank
Very
you.
nicely designed. And
How
thank
do
you
I
all.
access it as a viewer? Sorry for breaking in.
I will put it
but
on
Oh.
a link to it on the YouTube's description.
Oh, that is the advocate of our viewers has spoken. Excellent twist.
All right.
So,
Thank you all. Thank you, Roy,
Bye-bye.
for hosting.